There's a lot of talk of epidemics and pandemics at the moment in this country, but youth suicide is as much an epidemic as any other, and more specifically, Indigenous youth suicide is happening at scary levels in this country. I've got some stats here. The suicide rate for Indigenous people is more than 3 times that of non-Indigenous, and the leading cause of death for Aboriginal children from the age as young as 5 to 17 is the leading cause of death, accounting for more than 40% of deaths. I'm joined today by Indigenous Curriculum Coordinator for the University of Queensland, Wayne Williams. Welcome, Wayne.
Matt, how are you? Thanks for your welcome.
Mate, tell us what's happening. Why is there such large numbers of youth Indigenous suicide?
Well, Matt, I probably can only speak from the experiences that I've encountered and not only worked through but lived through. A lot of it is traced back to the intergenerational trauma concept that has lived with us since colonisation. It's about the perpetuation of atrocities that have been committed upon our people and how it is displayed through behaviours, through attitudes. As an Aboriginal man myself, Waka Waka man, I'm proud of it, which Cherbourg is part of that region. I really find it difficult to comprehend why this is not actually more well known, and I appreciate the work that you're doing to expose this situation, because Cherbourg is probably one of the most resource-rich towns from the external part of, say, government and community, but a lot of those programs and a lot of that funding is not, shall we say, allocated by programs within the community.
I'm glad you mentioned Cherbourg, Wayne, yeah, because that is it's a sensitive topic, I know, and I think it is important that it is spoken about. And I'm also wary that not being an Indigenous Australian, but I'm still interested and I still care, yeah, and I'm sure there's lots of our viewers that do care as well. But just in Cherbourg, a small Queensland town of 1,000 or so people, in the last 6 weeks there's been 3 kids that have killed themselves. Is it that these small communities, is that the sort of mentality that these kids start to pick up on?
I think mentality is probably a difficult word to describe, but what it is it's behaviour that they have seen happen before. They've seen within their community, like not just the last 6 weeks, but over the last couple of years, there's been many suicides, and also to what people don't hear all about are the attempted suicides that go unnoticed or unlabeled as attempted suicide. The workplace accidents, the car accidents where there's no skid marks, that sort of stuff. A lot of our in my previous world, I worked with education, and a lot of times I'd go out to Cherbourg, and our other team members would too, and we'd be talking to kids as young as year 3, saying, Uncle, no one loves me, and I feel really isolated. But we had a funeral the other week, and everybody said this fellow was good, and he was loved, and everybody was there for him. So I'm thinking maybe if I do that, I'm going to get that love and attention. And that, to me, as a human being, regardless of race, creed, or colour, it just tears at my heart. We do some training. We talk about we want to give people an option to suicide. Suicide is usually the end result of a journey that a lot of people go on. And some people look at suicide as the only answer that they can come up with. What we try to do with our training is actually give them options to keep them safe for now so they can look at the options.
Now, this training, Wayne, that you're doing,
yep,
and I've been to one of the trainings, albeit just to come and have a quick chat with yourself. But it seemed to me like it was a lot of adults that were there. Is that information being filtered down to the kids?
Well, that's the question we ask. We promote the training in a way that we're creating people within the community. That's any community, but that particular workshop we're talking about, we work with Mergen and Cherbourg people. What we try and do is create building suicide safer communities. So we're trying to get people within communities that live there, that are part of the day-to-day life, that already have interactions with the kids and older people and young ones, that already have that relationship, to provide them with the skills to be able to keep that person safe until they can get help. But the thing is, and this is not just Cherbourg, but right across the country. We'll call a training course. We'll put out feelers for people to come in. We'll promote it, and we traditionally will get people from government type departments that'll come. It's very difficult to get actual community members, the mums, the dads, the uncles, the aunties.
Why do you think that is, Wayne? Why aren't they coming along?
I think, mate, because one is the way we promote it is directly with people, so that's always a plus. But I think sometimes the problem we don't face head on, we can move it aside. So a lot of people fear the training in the sense that it could bring up past experiences for them.
You mentioned to me earlier on that a small town like Cherbourg or another town similar size, it's difficult because everyone knows each other. So if I go to one of my uncles and say, hey, I think you're having some issues, I might not talk to him because he might talk to someone else that I know and he knows who I am. There's no sort of trusted strangers that I can go to.
And that is exactly right, Matt. The smaller the community, and you know what, to tell you the truth, it's a similar aspect in a really big town, because you can be the loneliest person in a large city and still have no one to talk to. But I think we find in every community we go to, there's always a group of people who has everyone's ear, that when there's an issue, where there's something, they'll come and talk to. But the conversation around suicide or potential suicide or someone with thoughts of suicide actually puts the person with the thoughts of suicide in a really precarious situation, because they feel like they want to tell someone. Now, the person that they tell, if they tell them and they support them, that's great. But who then supports that person? Because they take that load on. So the idea of our training is to provide as many people in the community, and not just, in government departments, but mums, dads, uncles, aunties, grandmas, people at the local shop, people at the ration shed, anyone that they can go to. We at the program that you came to, we had a few local teachers come, and these teachers that came to the program were fairly young teachers, and really had some upsetting stories, but great in the fact that these kids felt safe with the teacher. And they come up and said to them, sir, I'm thinking of taking my life. And he said to me, wait, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do.
We said at the get-go that in the space of 6 weeks, 3 deaths, and that's the ones that we are aware of. And also that doesn't take into account the amount of attempts that these kids have taken on their life. And I have read somewhere that sometimes it's up to 20 attempts for every person that has killed themselves. But in such a short time frame, 3 and 6 weeks, is that unusual to see that if someone has killed himself, then someone else will not long after?
No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not unusual, mate. Now, I can't speak for what's in the heads of individuals, but in speaking to those around them, their family, their community, and medical staff that work with them, it's a tragedy that happens. But I think the kids, especially the young ones, feel there's no one they can relate to. And a lot of times, like as an example, cyberbullying and stuff like that. Like in my day, bullying was usually at school or wherever, and it went away. But that follows you home. You pick up your phone, it's there. So it's not just a once or twice a day you get it. It's a continuous pressure. And it's the same as anything. If you continually compress something and put pressure on it, it's going to crack. But the ripple effect that we have, because sometimes it can be felt that, as I said earlier, about that attention, but also just that really inbuilt grief and sorrow. And if that person, that's why it's really important that when a suicide occurs in a community funeral, that we all get together and have that yarn. We try and celebrate that life of that person. But it's supporting people to know that they can go to someone.
Well, it's about having options, isn't it? Yeah, it really is. And I keep coming back to Cherbourg because it is it's a little bubble, isn't it? It's 1,000 people. There's only one road in, one road out. And there's a part of me that feels that, you said it earlier, they don't feel like there are any other options. And I wonder if they're being told about, there's a world outside Cherbourg. There's a world outside this state, this country. It's a great big place, and I wonder if that's what it is. They just don't realise there's so much more to the world than just their little community.
Yeah, and it's the same as anything. If you see it enough, experience enough, it becomes common practice, or not common practice, but it becomes a more realistic option for you. Those kids are, great kids, and parents are doing a great job out there. But like, for instance, there was a situation in Cherbourg a couple of years back, maybe even 7 or 8 years ago, where a number of businesses closed down. Therefore, a lot of people were put off work. There were a whole lot of issues happening, and it's like a culmination of a lot of factors. And unfortunately, what the outside world sees, for want of a better phrase, is the eruption of that, is that result of that, all those things building up. Some of the stories that I've heard from our Far Cape communities about suicide, there's a lady, one of our elders up there, that she sits on a balcony. If she sees anybody walking around with a hose, she goes and grabs them, because 9 times out of 10, that hose is used to hang that person. Now, there's kids that climb up telephone poles, electricity wires, with a chain, throw it over and grab both, to take their life. And she says the chains are still hanging there with the burn off hands. Now, we don't hear or see that, but that's happening. That's what people are now walking past that and going, oh, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. How do we get away from that? We can just keep chipping away, buddy. And we're doing the best we can, but it's, as I said, we need to create something where we're all working together, black or white. It doesn't matter. We've got to look after each other, because no one else is going to do it.
Well said, Wayne Williams. Thanks for your time.
Too easy, buddy. Take care, Matt.